The shrine maiden had been so sheltered from the world that she did not even know what words to use at that moment. What good would it have done her anyway? Even the modest knowledge she had, the oracle had given her to soothe her own conscience. Upon the death of the previous oracle, the shrine maiden went to live near the village where she had been born, under the pretext of recovering. The now deceased oracle had been brilliant in her own way. She had used her puppet, the shrine maiden, to the fullest extent and stabilized the nation's politics. Her granddaughter, now the oracle herself, was almost as capable as her grandmother. However, she lacked experience. Perhaps it would be fair to say that they had fled until she gained the necessary insight. There was an unspoken understanding that when a new oracle took power, the shrine maiden would change as well. Several young ladies with excellent backgrounds were sent to the shrine maiden as apprentices. She educated them, just as the oracle had done for her. Perhaps she was trying to atone for deceiving them, but it also broadened their future prospects. She knew she could have given the shrine maiden's seat to one of them at any time, yet she couldn't help but cling to the office. She had after all been created to be a shrine maiden. She did not even have a name to call her own. Eileen was friendly toward her, but many of the young women saw the shrine maiden as nothing but an obstacle. Isla was among her enemies. She looked like Eileen's twin, yet the two women could hardly have been more different. About the time the shrine maiden knew she could not pretend to be recuperating forever, a messenger came from her village. A child had been born. The baby was brought to her wrapped in white swaddling clothes. Its skin was pale enough to see the blood vessels beneath. "Honored shrine maiden," a familiar voice said, startling her out of her reverie. The oracle was standing before her. The shrine maiden seemed completely lost in her memories. "Are you quite sure about this?" the oracle asked. A bowl of rice gruel sat in front of the shrine maiden. "Ah, yes," she had been about to eat. "It will raise suspicions if I delay any longer," the shrine maiden said rather brusquely. The oracle said nothing, but her expression darkened. How could she make that face when she knew everything? She clenched her fists and looked at the ground, refusing to meet the shrine maiden's eyes. "I will take my meal alone. You go wait elsewhere." The shrine maiden smiled. She had to smile. "I know I can trust you with all that comes after." She was about to bring the spoon to her lips when she became aware of a commotion outside. Frowning, she and the oracle looked at each other. Then the door burst open. "Please excuse me," cried a diminutive woman speaking in the Li language. It was quite a request for someone bursting into a dignitary's room. The shrine maiden knew her. She was one of the medical assistants, the one who had examined her before. But she wasn't supposed to be here today. "How dare you be so rude?" the oracle said, attempting to block her way. However, the young lady darted around her and made her way over to the shrine maiden. What had happened to the guards? "Rude, not me. This is my job," she spoke haltingly in Shayahese. She took advantage of the shrine maiden's astonishment to snatch the spoon from her. She stuck it into her own mouth and swallowed. The shrine maiden and the oracle both went white, but the court lady only smiled. In fact, she closed her eyes in bliss. Still grinning, she looked at the shrine maiden. "Very tasty, mushroom congee." She looked downright triumphant. Chapter 21, The Shrine Maiden's Confession. Maomao took another spoonful before the shrine maiden's attendant grabbed the congee away. "What do you think you are doing?" she demanded. "Simple." "I am tasting for poison," Maomao replied, switching back to her own language. The attendant had done it first, which showed Maomao's Shayahese wasn't quite good enough. Honestly, she was glad to be having this conversation in her native tongue. "Give me that congee, please." "I am not finished checking it. Or do you intend to let the honored shrine maiden eat the rest?" The attendant stayed silent, which Maomao took as permission to continue. "I must say I am impressed, even though I probably should not be. The way you got your hands on that poison without leaving a trace is remarkable. You have no proof." The attendant scowled, but only for a second. She promptly regained her unflappable demeanor. Naturally, anyone involved in such a far-reaching plot would have to be a good actor. The shrine maiden also appeared unfazed. That makes sense, Maomao thought. She was never going to conveniently burst out with a confession. "If you would be so kind as to wait a moment," Maomao said. "If the congee was poisoned, I should start showing symptoms any moment now. I'm not sure how sudden or intense the poison's effects might be, so please let me have the rest." She reached out, but the attendant did not move to give it to her. There was only one piece of mushroom in the bite I had. That is not nearly a fatal dose. Come on, give it to me. You cannot be serious. If you think it is poisoned, spit it out, Maomao said. She took some notes from the folds of her robe. What is that? The attendant asked. These are the notes kept by a court woman named Yao. She was tasting the honored shrine maiden's food for poison. She is a very diligent student, and one thing I taught her was that if a food smelled funny, she should not eat it. If Consort Aileen had poisoned the food with her incense powder, Yao would have smelled it. She may not be very experienced, but she would not make such a fundamental mistake. The notes contained several days' worth of detailed observations from before the dinner. She made a careful record of what the honored shrine maiden ate. For breakfast on the day of the formal dinner, she had a congee much like this one. The notes read, morning, congee with mushrooms. I am sure you were well aware of the effects of the poison. You timed it so they would appear immediately after the dinner. Perhaps you felt a little guilty. You used just enough medicine so that with careful treatment, Yao could still be saved. Yao was in much better condition now. It was hard to say if there might be lasting damage to her internal organs, but she was no longer in immediate danger. NN was feeling very reassured as well. I'm afraid you are not making any sense. The criminal has already confessed to the crime, has she not? Yes, she confessed. May I assume you received word that the culprit had been found and dealt with today? That is why her maidenship felt confident enough to kill herself. As far as Aileen had to take the blame, the shrine maiden could only commit suicide after the consort's guilt was assured. Perhaps that was why she had chosen a poison that could reappear in a second wave. It was even better for her if she were to die after Aileen had been confirmed as the criminal, because her death would likely be covered up. Nobody wanted Li to accidentally discover the true culprit. Maomao looked at the women. They were calm and cold. She did not think they would try to silence her right here and now. Lahan was waiting at the shrine maiden's villa. They had sent a messenger for Maomao's father, and she expected him soon. It would not be easy for them to stop me from speaking. However, having their plans undone at this stage is likely unwelcome. She understood this. She knew there was nothing for her to gain by doing this. The threatening tone she had taken with them was not actually about revealing their plans. It was simply an opening move, a way to get them to listen to her. Honored shrine maiden. I believe you and Consort Aileen know each other well, do you not? Maomao said. The shrine maiden replied yes. She continued, for once long ago she might have become my successor. A look of sorrow passed over her face. I thought so. Aileen had been trying to protect the shrine maiden. Would she have done that if the shrine maiden had truly been trying to blame everything on her? Considering their relationship, it seemed possible this had been their plan since Aileen arrived at the rear palace. This will mean the gallows for her, you know, Maomao said. The shrine maiden flinched when she heard that. She was not as skilled a performer as her attendant. If Maomao hoped to make someone reveal something, the shrine maiden seemed the most likely candidate. She said, I do not know how things are done in Sheo, but in Li, murder, even attempted murder, is punishable by death. She dedicated her life to you. Are you simply going to let them kill her? Neither of the other women said anything. You are then. Consort Aileen is the woman you educated so that she could have a future. Now you yourself are going to pluck that future away from her. Still, Maomao got no reaction. It was no use. I had figured as much. As she was trying to decide what to say next, the shrine maiden's head drooped. She was sitting on the bed and let out a sort of moan. Honored shrine maiden, her attendant said. What was I supposed to do? The shrine maiden asked. The words did not have the force of her office. They sounded pleading, almost gossamer, as if a breeze might blow them away. When the shrine maiden began to speak again, it was in Shea-Hanese. Maomao struggled to keep up. From the moment I was born, my life has been twisted. All I could do was follow the path that had been laid out for me. I had nothing except being the shrine maiden. I thought I could at least remain the shrine maiden to the very end. Honored shrine maiden, the attendant said, shaking her. But she continued her confession, speaking fluent Shea-Hanese and occasionally using a word in the Li language. It was much as Maomao had guessed. The royal faction in Sheo viewed the shrine maiden, who was now quite powerful, as an obstacle. They wanted to dislodge her from her office. She might have been able to endure that, but they also intended to marry her off once she was deposed. A touch of panic was understandable. She said in the Li tongue, her accent thick, "I suppose that they wished to drag the shrine maiden back down to earth. That child did hate me so." Isla, Maomao thought, the other emissary, so not everything Eileen said had been a fabrication. She had skillfully woven in some facts as well. Perhaps Isla's jealousy of the shrine maiden's position fostered her resentment of albino people. This would explain why she had used the white lady the way she had. It wasn't clear if the royal faction knew who the shrine maiden truly was, or perhaps they simply hoped to degrade the sacred woman by making her a common bride after removing her from office. Either way, simply installing a new shrine maiden would greatly reduce the power of the office. Maomao had not specifically said that the shrine maiden was in fact a man, but from the context they likely understood that she knew. Emotions were high, and perhaps it was a slip of the tongue. Maomao felt no inclination to draw attention to it. "It was Eileen who first spoke to me of it," the shrine maiden said. Eileen and Isla were like sisters. Eileen had revealed she had discovered what the other woman was thinking. She had a plan to use the white lady. The attendant added to her, the shrine maiden was something special. Eileen was well versed in Li's ways. She understood, for instance, that if the shrine maiden died outside Sheo's borders, her remains would be sent back to her homeland. Burial was the custom in Li, and burning of bodies was reserved for criminals. It was a simple cultural difference. In Sheo, people believed that cremating the shrine maiden returned her to the sun, from which she had come. If they only want some shards of bone, Eileen need only return pieces that do not reveal the shrine maiden's gender. The shrine maiden's death would leave Li with a debt to repay to Sheo, even if the killer was another Sheohanese person. However, Sheo would be free of the troublesome shrine maiden. The king would be quite pleased with that outcome. "Wouldn't it all be just the same as long as you were gone?" Maomao asked the shrine maiden. "No," she replied. "I may go, but there will be another shrine maiden, so that is all. Another young woman who has not yet reached menstruation would be found and set up as the shrine maiden. The attendant, who will return from Li, will be the power behind her. The next shrine maiden is far more capable than I am. That is why I can surrender the office to her." Maomao wondered what made the current shrine maiden so sure that her successor was more suited than a person of more than 40 years of age and experience. She kept her doubts to herself. "There will be no trouble without me." This time Maomao could not restrain herself. "Are you really sure about that?" she asked. "That is only true if everything goes the way you predict. Have you considered what might happen if His Majesty learns of your plan and becomes angry?" Everything the shrine maiden had spoken of so far benefited Sheo, and only Sheo. Li, who would be left holding the bag, gained nothing, not even with Eileen and the shrine maiden both sacrificing themselves. The shrine maiden was thinking of the good of her country, but she would achieve it at the expense of another. What did you intend to do if Yao died? Maomao wanted an answer to that question at least. She smacked Yao's notes. What had Yao done wrong? Could they tell her? Well, both other women clearly felt guilty. They had known they could not use a poison that was too weak or it might not work. To make the shrine maiden's demise plausible, they had to demonstrate that a potent toxin was involved. Yes, they had tried to lessen it, but one wrong move could have resulted in Yao's death. Was your plan for Sheo to reap all the benefit, and for Li to bear all the cost? If that is the case, I will not stay silent about this, Maomao said. Even if I die, the shrine maiden asked after a long pause. I hate when people think everything is over just because they are dead. It was as good as refusing to face the consequences of whatever you had done. Maomao felt better having been able to say what she had most wanted to say. Abruptly, she found herself thinking about a cheerful young woman who had loved insects. A young woman had vanished into the snow and was never found. Maomao occasionally peeked into the shops, wondering if one day she might stumble upon the hair stick she'd given that girl. How can you be certain, honoured shrine maiden, that Sheo won't begin making demands of Li after you're gone? I thought perhaps you might bend to a few of Sheo's wishes. Like what? Is it for food? That would be one thing, yes. And I thought perhaps you might be induced to hand over the pale woman, the one I believe you are holding in custody. You mean the white lady. The White Lady could not be the Shrine Maiden's daughter. It wasn't possible. Now that she thought about it, Eileen had hinted at the same thing from the very beginning. So what was the relationship between the two of them? At the very least, it seemed the White Lady was likely from Sheo, considering Isla had been using her. By all rights, that girl should have been brought up as the next Shrine Maiden, the Shrine Maiden said. The White Lady was born in the Shrine Maiden's village. She and the current Shrine Maiden were blood relatives. Although albino children were born more often than usual in that family line, something still made her special. If I had simply left my office and given it to her, none of this would have happened. But because I felt I had to hold on to my place, I sent the pale infant back to her home. Somehow, this led to the child traveling to another country and causing trouble, until she was treated like a common criminal. I was afraid that if it became known there was another albino child who could take up the Shrine Maiden's mantle, there would be even more strife. So I asked for her to be raised in secret, but then she became a pawn in someone else's game. Yes, Isla used her to destroy me. About 5 years ago I heard the girl had been taken away. The Shrine Maiden gazed at the ground, deeply distraught. The child could not become a Shrine Maiden, and there was nowhere else for her to go. Wow, you really caused our country nothing but trouble, Maomao said. Watch your mouth, the attendant said, and her composure vanished in an instant of fury. The Shrine Maiden restrained her though. They seemed to balance each other. One grew calmer as the other became more emotional. They acted like partners who had known and worked together for a very long time. I only tell you the truth, the Shrine Maiden said. I know. But consider spending the rest of your life making amends for what you have done. It was the only thing Maomao could say. It was the only suggestion that had occurred to her, even after a great deal of thought. If this didn't reach the Shrine Maiden, there would be nothing more she could do. She looked directly at the woman. Die for me. For real this time. Chapter 22. The future Shrine Maiden. The bones clattered as they were placed in the ceramic jar. The jar could fit only a few shards, barely enough to fill both palms. Hair white as a decorative tassel was held back with a woven blue hairband. The nameless girl whose bones were now in the jar had surely never dreamed that she would be venerated in a far country. She never would have envisioned the crowds of people attending the departure of her remains. She couldn't have imagined the songs of peace and rest sung for her repose as her bones went on their way. As she left the scene, Maomao touched the black sash she was wearing. It was a sign of loss, but not more than just a sign. After everything that had happened, the Shrine Maiden died as planned. Both Maomao and her father were there to inspect the body. If it had been any other physician, Maomao would have had the Shrine Maiden take a drug that caused a temporary, true death. But her father would not be fooled. She felt bad for threatening the Shrine Maiden. However, she also knew her father was very lenient when it came to people's lives. She had made him something of a co-conspirator. As for the real Shrine Maiden, Jinchi asked, "Is this place acceptable to you, Shrine Maiden?" He was not sure what to call her now that she was no longer in office. He decided to continue using her former title. Since she no longer occupied her sacred position, men like Jinchi could now approach her. They were in a room with layers of curtains, specially prepared to shield her from the sunlight. "Yes, it is quite tranquil," she said. "I am glad to hear that. I would be happy to change any of the furnishings if they do not meet your needs," said a handsome person in men's clothing from behind Jinchi duo. Her villa was quickly becoming a haven for people like the Shrine Maiden who could not appear in public. The Emperor continued to visit duo from time to time. Although she was no longer a consort, she was sharper and more thoughtful than most bureaucrats. Perhaps His Majesty simply wanted a friend with whom to share a drink. They had every reason to keep the Shrine Maiden in such a place. She had not wished to give up her office while within Sheo's borders. Instead, she travelled abroad to die and let her body disappear. Political asylum was out of the question for her. Her authority as Shrine Maiden would have plummeted. Perhaps she sought death because she felt there was no more she could do in her position. But that is not true. Did she realize how valuable she could be by continuing to occupy the top of her hierarchy, even here in a foreign country? Even after she had stepped off the stage for all to see, everything she knew, all the information she had gathered over decades, was a valuable resource. It felt to her as though she was betraying the land where she had lived for so many years, but she was not able to say so right now. Jinchi said, "You will honor the terms of our agreement." He was polite but firm. "Of course." "Do you not hold 2 hostages against me?" the shrine maiden asked. She was thinking of the White Lady and Eileen, both arrested as criminals. Considering their actions, it would have been and still would be perfectly ordinary to behead them at any moment. "I do request your aid to Sheo, however." It was an audacious thing to say. "If what you share with us makes it worth our while." Jinchi gave her his most luminous smile. It might not work on the shrine maiden who was in some way beyond gender, but it somehow looked blinding even in her dim chamber. There was no foul and fair in politics, only things that ended well or not. Situations like this one were hardly uncommon. Maomao began to follow Jinchi as he left the room, but she turned back when the shrine maiden said, "Ah, may I have a moment?" She was holding some sort of scroll.